The morning fog clung stubbornly to the cobbled streets of Dublin, muffling the city in an uneasy silence. Liam O'Sullivan adjusted his cap, the damp wool scratching his forehead as he hurried past the shuttered storefronts. The papers had been relentless, Hitler's armies surging through Europe, Britain bracing for invasion, but here, in the heart of a country that refused to take sides, the war felt distant, almost theoretical. Yet the tension hummed beneath the surface, a current pulling at everyone, even those who pretended not to notice. His sister Maeve was waiting at the kitchen table when he arrived, her fingers drumming against the wood. "You're late," she said, not looking up. The radio crackled between them, a BBC broadcaster's clipped tones slicing through the static. "German forces have crossed into France." She reached over and twisted the dial sharply, cutting off the report. The silence that followed was heavier than before. "They're saying Churchill wants our ports," Liam said, shrugging off his coat. The words tasted bitter. Ports Britain had once owned, had only given back 2 years ago, and now wanted again, as if Ireland's hard-won independence were just a scrap of paper to be revoked when convenient. Maeve's jaw tightened. "Let him want." She pushed a mug of tea toward him, the steam curling like a warning. "Dev won't budge." Developer Eamon de Valera, the president who'd spent his life untangling Ireland from Britain's grip, who'd fought in the Rising, survived execution, and now held the fragile line of neutrality like a shield. To some, he was a hero. To others, like their brother Sean, who'd run off to join the British Army last winter, he was a coward, turning his back while the world burned. Liam sipped the tea, too hot, just like Maeve's temper. "Sean wrote again," he said carefully. Her hand stilled. "And he called us traitors, and he said the Germans will come for us next, and he asked why we're hiding." Liam swallowed the words. "He's alive, that's all." Maeve exhaled, sharp and tired. Outside, a lorry rumbled past, the sound echoing like distant thunder. The Free States Army, underfunded, undersized, was a joke compared to the forces tearing Europe apart. If the war reached them, what then? De Valera's speeches about sovereignty wouldn't stop a bomb. A knock at the door startled them both. Father Byron stood on the step, his coat speckled with rain. "Liam," he said, nodding, "the committee's meeting tonight. You'll be there." The committee. A polite word for the men who'd stockpiled rifles in basements, who whispered about invasion plans and which side might come first. Liam hesitated. Maeve's eyes bored into him, warning. "I'll be there," he said. The priest left and Maeve slammed her palm on the table. "Damn it, Liam! Playing soldier won't bring Sean home. It'll just get you killed." "Someone has to be ready," he shot back. "For what? To die for Dev's pride? For a principle?" Her voice cracked. "Neutrality won't mean a thing if the Germans sail into Cork Harbor." The radio hissed, a sudden burst of static before another voice broke through. This time, de Valera himself, calm and deliberate. "Ireland's policy is one of non-alignment, not indifference. We will defend our sovereignty without entanglement in foreign wars." Maeve laughed, a hollow sound. "Listen to him, as if we get to choose." Liam said nothing. The truth was, they were already entangled. Sean in his British uniform, the IRA men smuggling guns, the government walking a tightrope between Churchill's demands and Hitler's shadow. Neutrality was a fiction, a fragile thing held together by will and luck. And luck, Liam knew, never lasted. The committee met in the back room of O'Malley's pub, the air thick with smoke and the sour tang of spilled stout. Liam edged through the crowd of men, some young and restless like him, others veterans of the Civil War with hardness in their eyes. At the front, Brendan Doyle stood beside a chalkboard smeared with rough sketches of the coastline, his voice low but urgent. "They're watching us," Doyle said, tapping the board where he'd marked Belfast. "The Brits have ships patrolling the North Channel, and if they decide they need our ports, they'll take them. No asking. Murmurs rippled through the room. Liam leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He'd known Doyle since they were boys, reckless then, even more so now, with the glint of something feverish in his gaze. "And the Germans?" someone called from the back. Doyle's mouth twisted. "If they invade Britain, they'll come for us next. A stepping stone." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Dev won't admit it, but we're already in this war. The only question is whose side we'll be on when it matters." Liam's stomach tightened. Whose side? As if it were that simple. Sean had chosen had traded his Irish tweed for British khaki, had written letters full of scorn for their neutrality. But Liam had seen the way Maeve's hands shook when she read them. A hand clapped his shoulder. Father Byron stood beside him, his breath smelling faintly of whiskey. "You've a thoughtful look," the priest murmured. "Not sure that's what Doyle wants tonight." Before Liam could answer, the door banged open. A gust of rain-damp air swept in, followed by a figure in a dripping trench coat. The room fell silent. IRA. The man, Liam didn't know his name, only the rumors, strode to the front, ignoring Doyle's scowl. "Plans change," he said flatly. "London's pressuring Dev harder. There's talk of conscription in the north. If that happens—" He didn't need to finish. The anger in the room was sudden, a live wire. Liam exhaled sharply. Conscription, forcing Irishmen in the north to fight for Britain. It would be a match to tinder. Doyle seized on it. "This is what we've been saying. They'll swallow us whole if we let them." His eyes swept the crowd, landing on Liam. "You've family over there. You know what's at stake." All at once, the room felt too small. Liam clenched his jaw. Sean's last letter had been full of pride. Doing his part, he'd called it. But what part was that? Dying for an empire that had spent centuries grinding Ireland into the dirt? Father Byron's grip tightened on his shoulder. "Easy," he muttered. The IRA man was still talking, something about smuggled arms, about being ready. Liam stopped listening. His head was full of Maeve's voice. Playing soldier won't bring Sean home. And the memory of his brother's laugh, bright and careless, before he'd left. He pushed off the wall. "And if we fight?" The words came out louder than he'd meant. "What then? A handful of us against the British Army? Against the Germans?" Doyle's face darkened. "Better than kneeling." The room erupted. Shouts, curses, a chair knocked over. Liam barely heard it. His pulse roared in his ears. This wasn't strategy. It was suicide. Father Byron steered him toward the door. Enough for tonight. Outside, the rain had turned to a fine mist, the street lamps casting wavering halos of light. Liam tipped his face up, letting the cold dampness clear his head. "They're not wrong," the priest said after a moment, "about the danger, but Doyle's looking for a war, not a way out of one." Liam rubbed his temples. "There is no way out." A silence. Then softly, "Your brother still in France?" The question caught him off guard. He nodded. Father Byron sighed. "Pray for him, and for us. We'll need it." He walked away, leaving Liam alone in the wet dark. Somewhere to the east, beyond the sea, Sean was crouched in a trench or marching through mud, part of a war Ireland had sworn to ignore. And here in Dublin the cracks were widening, between those who feared the coming storm and those who wanted to meet it head-on. Liam turned toward home. Maeve would be waiting, the radio murmuring its nightly warnings. He wondered if she'd ask where he'd been. More than that, he wondered if he'd lie. Maeve wasn't at the kitchen table when Liam returned. The radio was off, the house silent except for the creak of floorboards overhead. He hesitated in the doorway, his damp coat heavy on his shoulders. She'd left a single lamp burning, its weak glow pooling over an envelope on the table. Sean's handwriting unmistakable even from a distance. Liam didn't touch it. Instead, he climbed the stairs, each step a quiet rebellion against the weight in his chest. Maeve's door was ajar. the room beyond dark. "I'm not asleep," she said, her voice raw. He pushed the door open. She sat on the edge of her bed, still dressed, her hands clenched around something small and metallic. Moonlight caught the edge of it, a British Army button. Liam's breath stalled. "When did it come?" "This afternoon." She didn't look up. "They're pulling his unit back from France. The letter's a week old. He could already be dead." The word hung between them, unspoken. Liam crossed the room in 2 strides, sinking beside her. The button bit into his palm when she pressed it into his hand. A stupid, insignificant thing, polished smooth from worry. "He sent it as a joke," Maeve whispered. "Souvenir of my glorious service." That's what he wrote. Her laugh was a fractured thing. "As if any of this is funny." Downstairs, the clock chimed midnight. Somewhere beyond the blackout curtains, Dublin held its breath, caught between war and the illusion of peace. Liam tightened his fingers around the button. He should say something about the meeting, about Doyle's reckless plans, about the IRA man's smug certainty that neutrality was a lie. But none of it mattered, not with Sean's ghost already sitting between them. Maeve turned her face toward the window. "Do you think Dev knows?" "Knows what?" "That it's not working." Her voice was barely audible. "The neutrality, the speeches, all of it. The war's coming here, Liam. One way or another." He thought of Doyle's chalkboard maps, the rough circles around Cork Harbor, Belfast, Lough. They'll take what they want. The button dug into his palm. "We could leave," he said suddenly. Maeve went still. Not for good. Just until it's over. The countryside. Galway, maybe." The words tumbled out, half-formed. "We've cousins there. It's safer." She turned to him then, her eyes glinting in the dark. "And what? Pretend the world isn't burning? Pretend Sean isn't out there?" "I'm trying to keep you alive." The outburst surprised them both. Liam swallowed, lowering his voice. "Doyle's talking about ambushing British patrols. The IRA's stockpiling guns. If the fighting starts here, then we'll be where we belong." Maeve stood abruptly, her shadow stretching across the wall. "This is our home. I'm not running." The button left a crescent-shaped mark in Liam's palm. He wanted to shake her, to scream that principles wouldn't stop bullets, that Sean's stupid, noble choice might get them all killed. Instead, he said nothing. Maeve exhaled, long and slow. "Read the letter," she said, nodding toward the stairs. "Then decide what you're doing." The envelope was thin, the paper inside creased from too many hands. Liam smoothed it against the tabletop, Sean's scrawl leaping out at him. "Liam, if you're reading this, the censors haven't burned it yet. Lucky you. France is a shambles. We're retreating toward Dunkirk, though the officers won't say it. Doesn't matter, everyone knows. The Germans are everywhere, and we're—" A splotch of ink, as if he'd paused mid-word. "I think about home sometimes, the stupidest things. The way O'Malley's stout tastes when it's fresh. That rusted hinge on the back door you swore you'd fix. Maeve's face when she's trying not to laugh. Tell her I'm sorry. For the fight. For leaving. For all of it. And Liam, don't be an idiot. If Dev's neutrality falls apart, get her out. However you have to." The rest was scratched out, blacked over by the censors. Liam stared at the voids where his brother's words had been, the spaces between them louder than anything Sean had written. A floorboard creaked. Maeve stood in the doorway, her arms wrapped tight around herself. "Well?" she said. Liam folded the letter carefully. The button sat on the table between them, a tiny, gleaming accusation. He made his decision. "I'm going to the docks tomorrow," he said. Maeve went very still. "Not to fight," he added quickly. "But the British ships, they're evacuating men from France. If Sean's unit's pulling back—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The hope that flashed across Maeve's face was knife-sharp, terrifying in its fragility. She sank into the chair opposite him. "You think he'll be there?" Number The retreat was chaos. Everyone said so. The chances were slim to none. Liam reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I'll find out." Outside, a siren wailed. A test, probably, but the sound raised the hairs on his neck. The war was closer now, not just in Sean's letters or Doyle's frantic plans, but here, in this room, in the way Maeve's fingers tightened around his. Neutrality, he realized, had always been a fantasy. The truth was simpler. You picked a side, or the side picked you. Tomorrow he'd go to the docks, and after that, well, that depended on what he found.